Yeah, hi there, it's Nick Dutch. I'm back on the camera again one more time. Hi there, how the heck's it going? Now, I can understand very well why there is this intense backlash against Christianity by the atheist community. It's very similar to the backlash that there was when I was younger and going through the pagan movement, and lots of people who were involved with that were just, kicking their heels up against Christianity because, it was a good thing to do or a cool thing to do, or that these were people who had somehow been hurt or had been treated badly or discouraged by Christians rather than Christianity. So I can, understand and see where that's coming from. All of the things that we see which is being sold within Christianity just doesn't seem to have all that much connection to Christianity itself. Yeah, I can see where they're coming from, especially all of the literalism. What I've been doing recently is I've just gone on to Google and I've had a look at a book which contains a few essays on the subject of Christianity. Now, this is quite an old book. It's about 150 years or more old, and it's a book that's supposed to be being provided to ministers and missionaries, people who are going out supposed to be teaching the gospel. Now, I've read the first 1.5 essays in that particular book, and there's no mention there of women have to do as they're told. There's no mention there of the subjugation of women whatsoever. There's no mention of creation or creationism in that first half of the, or 1.5 essays within the book. And it's just about individuals studying the character of Christ and trying to work out where they're going off whack. How the character of Christ is basically much more on whack by comparison. There was an analogy in the first essay which suggests that when an archaeologist is going through the remains of an animal, looking at the bones and the ligaments and all the rest of that, the fossils, they can take a very scant bit of information and then turn that scant into information with reflection, contemplation and reasoning into a much more advanced understanding of what the animal could actually be. And yes, they might get it wrong, but on the other hand, they can still build a bigger picture and use that bigger picture as a way of trying to explain and trying to understand what that particular creature could have actually walked like, behaved like, the kind of food it might have eaten, and so on and so forth, the very type or essence of that particular creature. The analogy suggests that, yeah, the Bible is pretty low resolution and it is scant and there's lots of information missing there, but why don't people use it in the same or a similar manner to an archaeologist who's going through just a bunch of bones and trying to work out what the creature could have been, and to do this process introspectively for the purposes of studying what the inner nature of the character of Christ could be like. So not even looking at the miracles or walking on water, calming the storm, feeding the 5,000 with a couple of fish and a loaf of bread or whatever it was, but not focusing in on that, but focusing in on what these things say about the inner character or the personality which is behind the stories, which is actually very refreshing by comparison with what we've got today. Christianity itself seems to have slipped backwards to almost a medieval or Middle Ages type of attitude, because the extreme conservative Christianity that we see these days seems to be full of rather old-fashioned or outdated political ideas, which don't seem to be to do with the slow and steady transformation of the character through an academic or an educational or creative process, but it's much more to do with, do as you're told. So this period in time that I'm talking about, 1850 or early 1800s maybe, it seems actually much more enlightened religiously than what we have at the moment, which I actually think is really rather curious, because the way that we experience fundamentalist Christianity on YouTube, we see this in terms of the Kent Hovind versus Darwin type debates. We see this as creationism versus evolution. But if you go back long enough, the idea of the creation or creationism doesn't seem to be quite as big or popular amongst official church circles as we may be led to believe. So the whole dynamic of what it means to be a Christian, for instance, has basically gone in a very negative way. So Christianity is not only just going to have to grow up, it's also going to have to grow back to an earlier time prior to this new fundamentalism started to develop and to grow. I mean, people can call themselves fundamentalists, but essentially, where is their fundamentalism? Is their fundamentalism a form of bibliolatry? Are they worshipping and focusing in on the Bible itself, or are they trying to tease out from the Bible something that they could use in a reflective reasoning kind of way? I mean, this particular book, I mean, if it all works out, I'll shove the link in the information box so that you yourself can have a quick look. It's just one of those books on Google. What is it that actually turned Christianity into this particular variety of monster that we see these days, in which they, hate the gays, they hate the Jews, they tell women that they've got to do precisely what they're told, and they've got to obey all this, all the ideas of forgiveness, tolerance, and listening to the words of Jesus Christ has just been thrown out of the window, which is probably why we had the pagan backlash starting 1 year after the Witchcraft Act was repealed in the 1950s here in the United Kingdom. As well as these days the atheist backlash against Christianity. I mean, as I was saying, where is the focus of attention of these modern day Christians? And if they're focusing purely on the Bible, are they focusing on the character of Christ? Are they focusing on what this particular character is supposed to mean on a deeper level, a psychological or personality level? I don't think so. What they're doing is they're worshipping the Bible, which is self-contradictory by its nature. I mean, something that's written by half a dozen different people is going to have half a dozen different interpretations of the same thing. I mean, the book of Matthew, for instance, looks to me to be one massive straw man, because everything is being represented as if, just the first few chapters, you can see it there. Everything is a fulfillment of prophecy. This is a fulfillment of prophecy. That's a fulfillment of prophecy. But then that also lays down a rather negative precedent within the people who revere the Bible rather than revering the character of Jesus Christ. And the negative precedent is to start to bring about what we're now seeing with the end time cults, namely everything has got to be about prophecy and nothing has got to be about you yourself changing and growing. It's turning these people into superstitious, fearful believers rather than people who should be thinking more about what they're like as a character. In this online book, there's even a section saying that what a Christian should be doing is not actually praying, not celebrating, not evangelizing. Why would it be saying that? Because it's trying to persuade people to go through internal change in accordance with an intellectual and creative reflection upon what this Christ character actually meant. The whole debate as to what it means to be a Christian is just being based these days upon massive misrepresentations that were laid down by the members of the Christian social political body, rather than necessarily what their own faith is about. So yeah, it would make a lot of sense that it's worthwhile the atheists doing their backlash against what Christianity has become. But it's also important for the Christians of today to pay attention to that and to start thinking much more about where they want to go and what they want to do and what they want to achieve within their own faith. For the atheists to claim some kind of victory, if, let's say, the Christian population starts focusing in on a therapeutic self-developmental stance based upon the contemplation of the character of Jesus, that would not be an atheist victory. That would actually be a Christian victory, because they would be changing their interpretation of what their job is or what their role is down to the level that the religion itself was probably intended to be in the first place. Which is, of course, really rather weird if you think about it. But on the other hand, it's also quite important that these people actually think about making sure that their faith starts doing things which are good for them as well as good for other people. I mean, it's important to understand Christianity primarily because it's one of the world's major religions, and it's probably the major religion in the country that you live in if you're an English-speaking person. If you live in Australia, the United States of America, the United Kingdom, you are most likely to have been influenced to a certain degree by Christian culture. You just have to accept that, which can be difficult, especially if you want to be an independent free thinker. It is strange to think that if this Christian atheism or Christian deism takes roots and becomes like the mainstream within Christian thought, that would be essentially the Christians themselves not only having the last laugh, but also being moulded in a much more Christian way by, funnily enough, the atheist community. And maybe the obsession about where will you go when you die will actually be sort of like kicked out of the picture somewhat. And people will actually start becoming more obsessed with the way that they're living and the way that they're treating other people and dealing with people well in terms of business as well as social relations. And that would also probably be a very good and a very positive thing for the Christian community as well as for the atheist community and the scientific community, because then this media product which is out there, namely creationism, will be sent to the sidelines, which is basically where it should always have been. I mean, that's an old argument. It's a minority argument, and it's not a very good one. That's just a few more thoughts for today. Look after yourself, good fortune, God and or goddess and or none of the above bless, depending upon who you are, because sometimes I like to try and keep everybody happy. Great and glorious, soon to be famous one day, Nick Dutch. Speak to you again very, very soon. Bye for now.